Hi, Vani from Clubscraft, where we help sports coaches spend more time with their athletes. And today we are going to talk about assigning annual training hours to our training plan so that we know how much work we need to do overall in our training season to achieve a certain goal that we set up for our athletes. And the total amount of training hours that our athletes are going to be working out is what we call the workload or volume, workout volume. And this is going to determine how good of an improvement they can expect to have at the end of the season or at when race day comes for them for their a race that they really want to excel. And just as with everything in life, you really have to be careful not to do too much, but also not too little, because if you are putting on a lot of training volume, then you are risking your athlete getting injured. While at the same time, if the workload or training volume is too low, you are risking losing fitness. And that's something that we also don't want to happen for our athletes. When it comes to the overall workload, we usually start thinking about training hours instead of training distances. And there are a bunch of reasons why. Some of them are that an hour long run is going to be an hour long run for everyone in your club. So an inexperienced novice runner might cover 7, 8, 10 kilometers in that hour, while an experienced one might cover 12, 15, or even more. And that's pretty much the key to it, because you want to have them a set amount of stimulus on a given training or on a given workout, and by prescribing each of them certain time that they are going to be active, you make sure that they all get as close to the same stimulus as possible. Another reason why I also personally like assigning training hours instead of training distances is because it allows you to vary your training in a few different ways. So for example, if I prescribe to some athlete a 7 kilometer run, they might always go for the same loop around their house, and they never, because there aren't many routes available to them, and it starts to get boring. But if we assign them an 1 hour run, they might choose some smaller alleys where they can just move around, and so they can start exploring and yeah, just enjoy more of being outside and training. Another benefit is that when you prescribe time, you are not really in danger of your athletes starting to try and beat their previous time, because once you start getting into the same loop or same route that you're taking for your training, you will naturally start trying to just be a little bit faster every time. And because we are using time, we can vary the routes that our athletes take, and then we don't risk too much for them to try and beat their previous times and then maybe go too fast when they really shouldn't. So there are a bunch more different reasons why we should look for assigning training in time frames rather than distances. But this is a topic for probably another video or two. There are schools of thought that say distance over time, while others say time over distance, and probably we are going to cover them at some point later on. So now we should start looking into the previous years if we have already completed at least one season, and just start adding up all the times that we have trained and see if we can probably improve a little bit on it. So if we want to make a next step into some newer races, be faster, or reach the podium win races, then obviously we will probably have to train a little more. So a good guidance is to add 10 to 15% of your to the total time that you've trained previous season, in order to increase the stimulus and give you more performance enhancement. The more seasons you have raced so far, the better, because it's going to give you a lot more data points, And one thing that you particularly have to keep in mind is try and log as many injuries and aches and pains that you can, so that you can really dive into the data once the season is over and see, okay, did you overdo it in this period, or have you been training too little? So these things will give you a better indication of where you need to increase time and where you maybe need to slow a little. And if you haven't trained in this particular sport, or if you are just coming from something from a different sport, there is a bunch of different ways how you can assess your initial training load. You can check out somewhere around me now 2 tables which are talking about running and different distances, and how much time you will probably need to invest in order to get uh, reasonably fit to finish this event. And as you can see, triathlon is a lot more expensive on the time side than it is for running, because we obviously have to train for 3 different sports, and the longer you go, the more you have to emphasize pure endurance. And the only way you can build endurance is just by being active for a very long time. So for example, a normal long ride for me, some 2-3 months out of my main race, is to have a 5 or 6 hour ride at very low intensity, but just just cranking the pedals and make sure I get the endurance benefits. And if you then have also to do a 2.5-3 hour run, you're already at probably something like 8 to 10 hours of training. And then you have to, and that's just the long runs and long rides, and then you have to add a few more speed sessions, interval sessions, strength sessions, and we cannot forget about swim. So 2 times swimming at the minimum, 3-4 times is a lot better. So these numbers add up quickly. And so if you're going into the long distance triathlons, you are looking at an investment of something like 600 to 800 hours per year. And if you really want to be at the top edge of your age group, then you might come very close to the 1000 hours of training. So this is something like 20 hours a week, which is something that not many people can do because of other commitments. But if you have a supporting environment, and if you really plan your time wisely, then you can achieve also those sometimes crazy numbers. But the key here really to remember is that if you are starting out in a sport, then your goal basically is just to build endurance. And once your endurance is at an acceptable level, then you can start adding some speed workouts with raised intensity. And keep in mind that every plan that you make has to be realistic. It has to be molded to your particular situation, because if you assign yourself 600 hours of training and then you start dividing it up, that's something like 12 to 15 hours a week. And if you don't have the time, then it makes no sense to plan for these hours, because you will skip one workout or two, you will miss something, you will then try and squeeze it in sometime at the end of the week, and you will get injured for sure. And then you are going to be out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you won't be able to train. So it's much better to go for a lower, more conservative estimate for at least for your first year, to get you settled, to get you into a rhythm of training and working and having your life outside of your sport that you're doing. And then later on you can start ramping it up by those 10 to 15% every year. And if you're really into it, these smaller increments will make it, you won't even feel it. So it's going to be much easier to move from 10 hours of training per week to 12 to 15 hours, then starting at 15 and then just wreaking havoc on the rest of your private life and your work life. So keep this in mind when you are assigning your annual training hours, and you'll have a good time. And yeah, that's it for today. Next time we are going to look into prioritizing races. So now that you know how much time you can spend at your inside of or around your personal and work life, we are going to start looking which races are the best for you, and then we are going to prioritize them into A, B, and C races, where A races are the reason why you are writing this training plan, and then we are going to create some B races where we are going to look into maybe using them as test races, and C races are pretty much just races which you use just to get your race mode on, and you just race without too much pressure and just try and enjoy it. So all of these things we are going to look at in the next video, and if you want, you can read about everything in the blog post, which is linked always in the link below. And yeah, give it a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe, and yeah, see you tomorrow. Bye bye.